So my personal thing, that the thing that actually drove me to get into the political reason as a candidate, political arena as a candidate, was the fact that when I was 23 years old, you know, my mom died. I found her at home dead. And then 4 months later, my father died in a hospital, throat cancer, right? And then a month after that, we were doing like an inventory of the safe deposit box and found adoption papers and for a male gamble. And so I asked the clerk at the circuit court office, what's a male gamble? And then the clerk said, well, did your parents have other boys? And it's like, no. Well, then that's you. So I find out after going through the trauma of finding my mom dead and going through that whole thing and my dad dying and having to take care of all this stuff. Now I found out I'm adopted. So I have a sister who's 10 years older than me in Colorado. And so was I adopted? She's like, oh, no, of course not. It's like, well, we found adoption papers for a male gamble. This doesn't make sense. She said, oh, I always knew your name was Victor. So here I am, 23 years old. And the biggest lie about myself, like I had no idea. So I had to, you know, have her prove that I was their adopted son and to become executor of the state and all this kind of stuff, jump through all these hoops and do their stuff. And then when I asked for my information about, so what's the deal with my mother and father? So, oh, sorry, you can't know that. You live in New York State. You're not allowed to find out about your original parents, your original birth certificate. The birth certificate that I had my entire life, and I went into the Army with this birth certificate. It's a forgery by the Department of Health. What they do is when you're adopted in New York State, they redact your mother, your father, your home address, all that kind of stuff, and replace it with your adoptive parents' information. So if my parents didn't die and I never found that piece of paper in a safe deposit, I would still not know I was adopted. And all my life, I always felt like something was off and I could never really picture it. I just thought it was me. Everyone feels that or whatever. It's like, no, because you know, at the most cellular level, you know your mother. You know, you've been in your mother's womb for 9 months or whatever. You know, you have a connection. And when that wound is severed, you know, when you're taken away from your mom, that the voice that you've heard, the smells that you smelled, it does something. It's what they call the primal wound in the adoption scenario. So I am a strong believer of adoptee rights. And we're talking about the injustices in this country. 40 states in this country do not allow adoptees the right to see their birth certificates to reconnect with their parents. So what we have seen several times is adoptees marrying their siblings because they didn't know, because they grew up in smaller communities. And so, oh, I really like that person. She's a lot in common with me. And they find out after they got married, oh, it's because she was my sister. You know, it's mind-blowing. People older than me, DMC for Run DMC didn't find out he was 35 until he was 35. He was adopted. He's writing his autobiography, calling his mom to fact check. And she's like, oh yeah, by the way, you're adopted. I know people that are going to their family members' funerals at 90 years old, finding out they're adopted for the first time. They're like, why are you so upset? There wasn't even your real dad. I'm like, what? You know, and they're finding out that they've been adopted or some other form of. I know people hate it when I say this, but it is a form of modern day slavery, or we're talking about, you know, trafficking, human trafficking, not slavery. I'll say human trafficking, like Nicole likes to talk about, right? When you take a child away from their mother or father or whatever, and you place them into another family, and you do not let that child know about the truth about their origins, that's human trafficking. I am sorry.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that these kind of laws started with, you know, people of European descent.
Yes, it did. The biggest notorious one is this woman named Georgia Tan. She was based out of the South, and she's the one that she stole babies from young people.
And I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, she stole people from poor families, poor white families, right? Not even black. She's white. She steals from poor white families. So what we talk about, not all the racism, but classism, and sold them to rich, high-powered white families. Like Joan Crawford, her adopted children were through Georgia Tan. I mean, these are the things that we have to talk about in this industry. Now, in the past, it was because people don't want to find out because they say, oh, it's for protection of the mother that gave them away. So why I was going to talk about what drove me into running for office was, no thanks to the state, I had to hire a private investigator. I had to beg for money from friends and whoever to get money to find my mother. When I found her 4 years ago, the first thing she told me was, are you mad at me for giving you up for adoption? And I said, no, of course not. I love you. I was trying to find information about you. Nobody would let me find it. And the second thing she told me, she prayed for 48 years that she would see me before she died. I say no one should have to go through that kind of pain. She obviously had her own pain. My mother's story is she was born out of wedlock. Her mother didn't want to raise her. She sent her down to South Carolina to get raised. Her grandfather she loved died when she was 9. Her grandmother she loved died when she was 11. She was going to come back to New York. She was traumatized about coming back to New York and tried to commit suicide at 11 because of this trauma. So my trauma starts with her. And then, hanging out, from South Carolina to New York in the 60s, pushers, pimps, drugs, all kind of stuff, parties. She got raped when she was 14. And she had me out of a rape. And so, of course, she's 14 years old. She needs to finish school. She wants to do these things. And the family offered to raise her. And my mother, God bless her, she said, you guys did such a rotten job with me. Why would I want you to raise my child? So she had to do the ultimate. She did everything she did as a mother, sing to me while I was in her and all that kind of stuff. And she placed me into foster care system to get adopted and to have a better life. But she was told at 14, where was her legal representation?
That should have been null and void.
Right.
Because a 14-year-old child cannot make those kind of decisions. It should be like, okay, you can review it once you turn 18.
Yeah, she was told.
You can contest it when you get legal consultation.
Exactly.
When you get 18 years old and stuff, then you can revisit that, and you should have the right to contact the parents. But it is like, I think like, I'm gonna call it this time. I'm gonna call it capitalism. Mm-hmm. That it just treats everybody as a commodity.
Yes.
Everything is a commodity. And the most vulnerable population are children and elderly, seniors. And that's where we're heading. And, it's scary. Right. It's scary. I mean, like, I'm so honored and thankful that you disclose. And I'm sure like people who are watching and that you're listening. And if you ever have that gut instinct in your soul, in your heart, that those are not your parents, contact James, because obviously he knows a lot about it, and you're very empowered. And you ever thought about writing a book? No, for real. No. You could help. I was watching Tyrese yesterday.
Yeah.
Tyrese?
Yeah.
Fast and Furious.
Right, exactly.
He had a meltdown.
He did?
On Instagram. Because he hasn't seen his daughter in 2 months.
Oh my God, really?
And he said, I'm giving, I think, $14,000 child support and stuff. And he just misses his daughter so much. And he just had a meltdown. And I can see, like, right after that, he came out and like he was ashamed. I think he removed the video and he said, I'm okay. And this is just like whatever.
Wow.
And it's just like, we are so... we've been indoctrinated into believe the worst about Black men, and to like be like, and it's such a, satanization of Black men that, that people, they just like started like, people that was laughing about his video. And I was just like, it's like, for real, why is it so hard for people that he is missing his little daughter? And I don't know the story. I don't want to get into that, but that pain was real, and it just like it really, and wow. Well, I really have no idea.
Well, no, that's why he said like, what's the thing that burns me? And that's the thing. I guess I have to admit, because like early in my campaign, we had a trans forum in Brooklyn when I was first started running for office, and we were sharing in a circle our stories about growing up and dealing with things and the feelings and the trauma that we go through. And we really got personal on suicidal thoughts and all these kinds of stuff that affect our identities. And like I said, like my identities are slightly different, but it's still the same trauma of like, who am I? Where am I? What, all this exception. And the thing so I want to tell you one quick thing about like Akeem Browder. Right, he comes from the foster care system as well, and Khalif did. So every time I think of Khalif was adopted into the Browder family, and I think about there is somebody that gave Khalif up for adoption into the foster care system that does not know that their child went to Rikers for 3 years. for supposedly stealing a backpack that he didn't steal. That is it burns me every day I think about that. You know, it's like, and I wish there was some way that people would know, you know, all these connections that there are through these injustices. So, yeah, like I said, you know, whether it's, oh my God, I can go on. We're gonna have to do another show.
But yes, definitely. I want you to come back. But you know, I am just getting so angry right now because, you know, I literally can point out, you know, like 98% of the Black Americans, and they have, you know, very painful stories. Yeah. I'm just thinking about my sister, Shia Diamond. You know, I can talk about it now because she came out already saying her mother had her when she was 14. Her mother is my age.
Wow.
And she is my contemporary.
Yeah.
I'm like, when you find out, she told me, my mom is, I think is 54. I think she said it was 54. It's like, I'm 52. Yeah. I'm like, you know, it's like, really?
So we're the same age.
Yeah, 1965.
Yeah.
So, but to think, you know.
Yeah, that's so wild.
You know, her mother is 54.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and for me, it's like, you know, this is so unacceptable. And people are like, they just think it's like 2 or 3 cases. I mean, you just name you know Khalif Browder. You name yourself. I'm naming Shia Diamond, you know, my best girlfriend, and it's just like it, and anybody like if we just started talking about it, just like, and you know, I really feel like, you know, I'm not even white. I just have pale skin, and people, they think, you know, what they call this closer degree of proximity to whiteness, and it has given me so much privilege.
Yeah.
I own property.
Well, yeah.
And I was like, for what? I mean, I haven't done really nothing spectacular for me to be like, you know, in this system of advantage for me.
Right.
You know, and it is just like, that's not to say people are going to say like, but that happens in the other communities too. Yeah, it happens, but come on.
Yeah. No, it's true.
I mean, what are the odds that I'm sitting right here next to you and you know, like, you talk about your mother, the same thing as Shia's mother.
Right.
14 years old.
Yeah. It's
raped at 14 years old.
Yeah.
Oprah Winfrey raped, you know, whatever. And it's like everybody just like, you know, like,
yeah.
It's at least, you know, who has not been raped.
Right.
That's easier.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, rape seems to be something that circles me all the time, and it just infuriates me. That's why when I first hear a rape case, it just triggers all this kind of stuff. I'll tell you one more tragic thing. So when I was 18, before I went into the Army, I had a girlfriend. We were in the park at night, and these 2 guys came up and attacked us. And this one guy like stuck a knife in my side and a gun on my head, and they took her away, and they raped her. They tied me up, you know, and I was just like, you know, and this is before I knew about like my thing. So it's like, so finding about later on in my life that I was born from rape, and then sort of now I had to relive that other trauma again. And what's really painful for me is my girlfriend at the time, she passed away, and I know she was still dealing with so much stuff, and we had so much that we needed to talk about and work through with that scenario, because you can imagine 2 young kids, you know, trying to, like, you know, have like a relationship and right out of high school, all that kind of stuff, you know, the time where you're supposed to be happy, and it's shattered by this horrible experience. I used to go to Central Park at night because it was around where the Central Park rapist thing happened, and I used to go up in a tree with a knife, just waiting for somebody, like night after night, just waiting for something to happen, because I didn't know what to do. I was just like, I'm gonna get whoever did this, you know, freaking kill them, you know, because I was just so like, what do you do with this when somebody does this cowardly, brutal act? You know, it's just like, so I have no tolerance for rape. I have no tolerance for capitalist crimes against people. These elected officials that do things that deny people rights. You know, once again, more adoption stuff for you. International adoptions. I'm going to be on adoptions right now. I'm so sorry, but that's so people that are adopted from other countries are by, you know, mostly European families or whatever, are never citizens of this country, and they have been getting deported for years. especially under Obama. A lot of the deportations we've seen were under Obama for adoptees they thought they were citizens of the country. I was adopted by American parents. I thought I was a citizen. No, you weren't. And so now you have children that are coming from Guatemala, Korea, China. They're being sent back to these places. Yeah, commodities. Exactly. And they don't speak the language. They don't know the way around. And so many of them have been murdered or killed because they're trying to maybe scrap some money together, do whatever they need to do to try to come back home to the only country that they knew, and they've died. And so that's why, like I said, adoption keeps coming back into my theme, because it's these elected officials that block this.
There's nothing that protects children. It's like, it is across the board.
Yeah.
That's a whole system across the board that blocks the communities that are actually being affected and experiencing firsthand from every board of directors, from every client consumer advisory board, from everything.